Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a truly rich and often misunderstood landscape, the diverse tapestry of African feminist theories. When many of us hear feminism, our minds might immediately go to Western movements, right? But our exploration today will reveal a vibrant and distinct intellectual tradition, deeply rooted in African histories, cultures, and, well, philosophies.
It's really fascinating how these theories emerge, not merely as, a critique of existing frameworks, but as a proactive, distinct articulation of unique African perspectives on women's empowerment. Our mission today is to truly understand these indigenous frameworks like Stiwanism, Motherism, and Nego-feminism, grasping their distinct focuses, their core ideas, and importantly, how they offer compelling alternatives to mainstream Western thought, all while being profoundly grounded in foundational philosophies such as Unhu or Ubuntu.
Exactly. So get ready to discover approaches that champion everything from social transformation and the profound power of nurturing to the art of strategic negotiation. You're going to gain a powerful new appreciation, I think, for the diverse ways women's emancipation is conceptualized and pursued across Africa. And that offers crucial lessons for all of us, really.
Okay, so to truly appreciate the wisdom embedded in these theories, we first need to set the historical and philosophical stage a bit. What spurred the emergence of these distinct African feminist theories? I mean, why did they arise? What was it about the dominant Western feminist discourse that felt, well, insufficient or simply different from an African perspective?
That's an excellent starting point. Yeah. The sources make it abundantly clear that a major catalyst was a perception that Western feminism often fell short. It didn't always address the unique historical and cultural context of African women.
This included critical issues like, well, racism and colonialism, which were frequently overlooked in many Western dialogues at the time. There's a strong theme here of what some call cultural imperialism, this concern that Western ideologies were kind of undermining indigenous African philosophical frameworks.
Right. So it wasn't just about demanding rights for women in isolation. It was a much broader critique of how Western ideologies were being applied universally, sometimes without a what the sources call a globe-centric realization of local realities. And it brings into sharp focus a crucial aspect, the double oppression faced by many African women, navigating both misogyny or patriarchy and the enduring legacies of racism and colonialism. That's huge.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see, many African cultures have a fundamentally different understanding of the individual versus the collective. While Western cultures often privilege the individual story, individual agency, in pre-colonial Africa, women frequently express discontent collectively. Think about the powerful example of the Anlu practices of the Kom women in Cameroon. They would wear men's clothes or even, strip naked to collectively voice unhappiness about social, political, or economic injustices.
Wow.
This deeply ingrained collectivist spirit is a fundamental differentiator. It really is.
That collective orientation that truly sharpens our understanding, it leads us directly, doesn't it, to the foundational philosophy underpinning so many of these African feminisms, Unhu or Ubuntu. What exactly does this profound philosophy mean for our discussion today?
Unhu or Ubuntu is absolutely central.
Yeah.
At its heart, it's a philosophy of communal existence, the idea that essentially I am because we are. A person exists because of others, defined by social bonds and cultural traditions rather than just individual traits.
Oh, okay.
It encapsulates moral norms and virtues like kindness, generosity, compassion, benevolence, courtesy, respect, and a deep concern for others. The spirit of Unhu emphasizes human dignity, group solidarity, and mutual respect. This naturally implies equality, fairness, and justice, making any abuse of women, well, profoundly unacceptable within this framework. Think of it as the foundational belief that my humanity is inextricably bound up in yours. It's a powerful lens.
It's a really powerful foundation. Communal existence, shared humanity. Okay. With that in mind, let's now journey through some of the groundbreaking theories that have emerged from this distinct African worldview. Each offers a unique lens on empowerment, but like you said, you'll hear those common threads of Ubuntu woven throughout. First up, let's explore Stiwanism. This is a framework championed by Malara Ogundipe-Leslie. What's its core proposition?
Right, Stiwanism. It stands for social transformation, including women in Africa.
Yeah.
And it's fundamentally about the inclusion of women in Africa's broader social, economic, and political development, working alongside men.
Alongside men, okay.
Yeah, the core idea is transforming the continent with women as co-participants, rather than advocating, say, a separatist approach. Ogundipe-Leslie observed that the very word feminism itself can sometimes be a red rag to the bull for some African men.
Right.
So Stiwanism deliberately emphasizes a harmonious society built together through cooperation.
And it has some really striking historical insights, too, doesn't it? Like the idea you mentioned about women's menstruation as a point of power, or even how women historically use the threat of stripping naked as influence, because seeing a naked woman other than one's wife was culturally unclean. That's a fascinating cultural detail. It highlights a very different power dynamic.
Indeed, very different. It also rigorously highlights that Black women's oppression is inextricably tied to these larger structures. Imperialism, colonialism, neocolonialism. Stiwanism calls for women, especially middle-class women, to move past what it calls false consciousness.
Right.
Basically, unknowingly adopting ideas that work against their own interests and take an active personal interest in social advocacy, educating other women about their rights and responsibilities. And it's important to note, like Motherism and African womanism, which we'll get to, Stiwanism tends to view sexuality as a private matter. It often denies lesbian politics as a central focus in that public sphere.
Okay, interesting distinction. Moving from that broad call for inclusion, let's consider Motherism. This is from Catherine Acoloniu. Now, this sounds like it takes a remarkably different yet equally foundational approach, centering on something quite primal.
Motherism, yes. It does prioritize motherhood, nurturing, and love as foundational elements of African womanhood and, really, humanity. It's presented as an Afrocentric alternative to Western feminism, viewing motherhood and the ability to nurture not as limitations, but as profound strengths.
Okay.
But what's crucial here is that a motherist isn't necessarily a biological mother. It can be any man or woman committed to the survival of Mother Earth and embracing human struggle.
So it's broader than biology.
Much broader. The sources state its weapon is love, tolerance, service, and mutual cooperation of the sexes, not antagonism or violent confrontation. And like Stiwanism, it also denies lesbian politics as a core tenet.
So it's less about literal biological motherhood and more about embodying those nurturing, responsible qualities for the whole community and the environment. That deeply resonates with the Ubuntu philosophy, that caring for others, building collective well-being. It seems very connected.
It absolutely is. It grounds the theory in humanity, togetherness, peaceful coexistence, all central tenets of Ubuntu. It's about drawing power from traditionally female-associated roles, yes, but extending that care way beyond the immediate family.
Right, to the community, the planet even. Yeah. Shifting gears slightly, let's look at Nego-feminism, introduced by Obioma Nnaemeka. This offers another unique methodology. The name itself, Nego-feminism, hints at its strategy.
Yes, Nego-feminism is precisely that, a feminism of negotiation. It also carries the meaning of no-ego feminism, structured by cultural imperatives.
No ego, interesting.
It advocates for a non-confrontational approach, masterfully utilizing compromise and cultural relevance to achieve feminist goals. It's about knowing when, where, and how to detonate and go around patriarchal landmines.
Oh, good phrase.
Within specific cultural contexts, right?
Right.
Rather than launching a direct, head-on attack that might just backfire.
That's a very clever, very strategic approach. The example given of Ifinwa Njako, who successfully argued for housing benefits for married female public workers. She shifted the argument from gender equity to family well-being, children's welfare to get it done. That perfectly illustrates it.
Exactly.
It's about fostering collaboration, not seeing men as the other, but as, well, a critical half making the human whole.
Precisely. It aims to bridge that gap between potentially anti-male stances and traditional anti-feminist views, creating a common ground through compromise, making sure feminism isn't seen as just an attack, but a path to collective betterment.
Okay, next up is femalism from Kioma Opara. This sounds like it brings the physical body into the discussion in a very powerful, symbolic way.
Femalism does exactly that. It centers the African female experience within these harsh realities of post-colonialism, globalization, economic disparity, traditional culture, all of it. And it explicitly foregrounds the female body as a site of profound patriarchal abuse and violence. What's truly poignant here is the comparison it makes, likening the lacerated female body to the mutilated African nation, jostled by wars, poverty, colonialism. So this framework posits that true national liberation is fundamentally tied to the liberation of the female body, making women's agency and safety absolutely central to Africa's broader self-determination. It's a deep connection.
That's a very powerful linkage. And what about snail sense feminism by Akachi Adamora Ezigbo? The metaphor alone is intriguing. A snail.
It is intriguing, isn't it? This theory eloquently suggests women should adopt snail-like patience and efficiency in negotiating their ways around and over the, quote, boulders, rocks, thorns, crags, and rough terrains of patriarchy.
Patience and efficiency.
Yes. It advocates for caution, flexibility, persistent negotiation with patriarchal forces rather than direct confrontation. The snail, as the metaphor goes, carries its house on its back without feeling the strain.
Right.
If danger looms, it withdraws into its shell and is safe. So it's a call for a conciliatory or cooperative attitude towards men, much like their foremothers used to survive and thrive through strategic adaptation.
So another form of strategic engagement, but emphasizing patience this time.
Exactly. This patient, strategic approach offers a powerful counterpoint to more confrontational feminism. It shows how subtle, consistent pressure can dismantle patriarchal structures, maybe without triggering that overt resistance, especially in culturally sensitive contexts.
Okay, let's talk about womanism. Now, this term, initially from Alice Walker in the U.S., is one many might know. But how did it evolve into a distinct African variant, separate from its African-American roots?
Right. Womanism initially emerged as an African-American variant, largely because mainstream white feminist theories, well, they often failed to consider the unique experiences of black women. They focused mainly on middle-class white women's issues.
Yeah.
Alice Walker famously defined a womanist as a black feminist or feminist of color who is committed to survival and wholeness of entire people, male and female. Her famous line is, "Womanist is to feminist as purple is to lavender."
I remember that.
It recognized the triple oppression of black women, racial, classist, and sexist. However, the African variant, articulated by theorists like Ogunyemi, explicitly shifts the focus. It zeroes in on issues specific to the African continent, things like interethnic skirmishes, religious fundamentalism, and in-lawism.
In-lawism. Can you explain that?
Yeah, in-lawism refers to the complex dynamics and often powerful influence of extended family members, particularly in-laws, on a woman's life and autonomy within marriage in many African contexts.
Oh, okay, I see.
This African variant also largely rejects lesbianism as a central bread-and-butter issue, emphasizing instead the dignity of motherhood and wifehood in those contexts. A key distinction is that African womanism often holds that African men and women share more common ground, more shared struggles than African women might share with white women.
That's a crucial difference in perspective. Finally, let's explore Islamic feminism. This must address a very unique set of challenges, navigating both religious faith and the fight for gender equality.
Islamic feminism, yes, it's rooted deeply in Islamic culture. It focuses specifically on women in the Arab world, with its origins traced back to Egypt. It really evolved from this very real dilemma many Muslim women faced, feeling forced to choose.
Choose between their faith and feminism.
It's exactly between their Islamic faith and the pursuit of gender equality. It's a powerful response to patriarchal interpretations of Islam that often subjugate women. And it's also a response to secular feminism's perceived rejection of religious values. At its core, it aims to assert that Islam itself does not inherently condemn women or equality, but that patriarchal interpretations have historically obscured its truer message.
And there are powerful literary examples that illustrate this struggle, aren't there?
Absolutely. The works of Nawal el-Saadawi are incredibly prominent here. For instance, her novel, Woman at Point Zero. It depicts Firdaus, a protagonist who chooses prostitution as a desperate way to fight patriarchy.
Right, a very stark story.
Extremely stark. It ultimately leads to her imprisonment and death. Her tragic story highlights what el-Saadawi terms private patriarchy, the domination of men as fathers, husbands within the home, and public patriarchy, the broader domination of men in society at large. It powerfully showcases the conflict between systemic violence and this deep yearning for justice. El-Saadawi herself has stated she writes for people everywhere who believe in justice, freedom, equality, peace, but primarily for people in Arab countries facing these complex realities.
So we've explored these diverse and, frankly, profound theories. What does all this look like in action today? How are these ideas actively shaping contemporary African feminism and activism on the ground?
Well, African feminist thought today is really grappling with critical, cross-cutting issues, things like sexual and gender-based violence, SGVV, sexual and reproductive health rights, SRHR. They are huge focuses. There's been a tremendous amount of work both in academia and civil society. And it's led to tangible outcomes, like supportive legal statutes. You see things like Uganda's Domestic Violence Act or the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilations Act.
Real legal changes.
Yes, and extended sentences for rape in some places. We've also seen powerful mobilizations around sexual harassment in higher learning institutions, sort of akin to the global #MeToo movements, but very much tailored to specific African contexts and challenges.
And it's fascinating how the internet, ICTs, social media,
Yeah,
how these have become incredibly powerful tools, fostering this vibrant call-out culture against sexism and misogyny. It allows for unprecedented mobilization,
yeah,
right, and networking, access to diverse voices across the continent.
absolutely. This digital revolution has also heralded what many call the millennial or fourth wave of African feminism.
Hmm.
This is often a generation distancing itself a bit from traditional academia, finding its voice and community online.
Nurtured by the internet, yeah.
Exactly. And this generation has notably revitalized the notion of intersectionality on the continent, understanding how various identities, race, class, gender, sexual orientation, combine to create unique forms of discrimination or privilege.
Right, how they overlap.
Precisely. As powerfully seen in movements like South Africa's #RoadsMustFall. That perspective didn't just focus on dismantling racist symbols, but also shed light on the additional burdens faced by Black feminists and Black queers, calling for renewed awareness of how interconnected these layers of oppression truly are in the African experience.
That's truly incredible, the way technology and this new generation are shaping and accelerating the movement. And there are also broader Pan-African networks strengthening these efforts too, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely. Since 2006, the African Feminist Forum, AFS, has provided a really vital continental platform. They adopted a charter of feminist principles. This forum aims to build solidarity, create autonomous spaces for discussion, produce new feminist knowledge, and engage strategically with other social movements. And crucially, it makes deliberate efforts to mentor young feminists and bridge intergenerational gaps, especially around evolving issues like social media activism or debates around prostitution or LGBT rights, fostering a unified yet diverse front.
Now, let's touch on something you mentioned earlier, what the sources describe as bread and butter issues.
Mhm.
This highlights a really critical distinction from some Western feminist discussions, doesn't it?
It's an absolutely crucial point.
Yeah.
Unlike some Western counterparts who might, as the sources rather bluntly put it, speak with stomachs full of food,
Right.
many African feminists are often grappling with immediate fundamental needs. They are in many ways hungry. Their immediate task is frequently, literally, saving themselves and their kin from starvation.
That puts it in stark perspective.
It does. So key concerns often pivot to things like housing, escalating food prices, the impact of imperial and ethnic wars, domestic violence, child abuse, the devastating impact of HIV/AIDS, unemployment, pervasive gender discrimination, acute poverty. These are the immediate, tangible realities directly driving so much of the activism and shaping the discourse on the ground.
And to bring this powerful distinction to life, there's a case study mentioned from Fungai Machiori in Zimbabwe. She highlights this very struggle for relevance, noting that in Zimbabwe, feminism still carries negative connotations sometimes, often seen as elitist or westernized, especially in rural areas where these grassroots issues dominate daily life.
Exactly. Value is still often determined primarily by marriage and motherhood in those contexts. She emphasizes that for feminism to truly resonate in Zimbabwe, it means finding the right language,
Listening first.
doing more listening to local needs and context before trying to, dictate a specific narrative from outside.
What a profound deep dive this has been into the truly diverse and, well, profoundly rich landscape of African feminist theories. We've seen how they are deeply grounded in African ideals and values, often blurring the lines between them, maybe, but always emphasizing collective effort, inclusiveness, and that cooperative spirit rooted in the Ubuntu philosophy.
Indeed. From Stiwanism's call for co-participation in social transformation to Motherism's focus on love and nurturing for all, Nego-feminism's strategic negotiation, Femalism's powerful body politics, Snail-sense feminism's patient diplomacy, and the unique challenges addressed by African womanism and Islamic feminism. These approaches offer powerful, culturally relevant paths to women's liberation. They really challenge us to think beyond just one single narrative of feminism.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? How do you see these indigenous approaches changing the global conversation on gender and social justice? And what vital lessons can be learned from their emphasis on community, on negotiation, on culturally specific strategies in today's increasingly polarized world? Something to ponder, perhaps, as you look at global movements from a potentially new vantage point.